Hello there. In this video I'm going to be giving you some tips and ideas for how to improve your public speaking, or if you have exams at school, how you can prepare for oral exams with some confidence. So let's kick off. I've got seven tips for you here that should help. First one is to acknowledge that when you are speaking in public and nobody else is responding, you're talking non-stop for maybe 10 minutes or so. That's not a very natural thing to do. It's a strange dynamic. And the first thing to really do is accept that, and accept that you will feel nervous and maybe unprepared or anxious as you deliver your speech, or as you think about delivering your speech. And everyone is like that, and that's the first thing really to recognize and acknowledge. It's not an unnatural feeling to have, because it is an unusual experience to be speaking in public for a length of time. Second thing to think about is that you are in control of this. And so you know what you're going to say, and so the more you prepare and practice, the more confident you can be. If you're making a general speech in public, you want to have a particular message and takeaway that people remember after your speech, and you should mention this early on. And equally, if you have an exam, you should have a thesis statement or a claim very early on that you mention, and then the rest of your speech is proving that this claim is true. Third general tip is don't memorize speeches. If you do that, it tends to sound unnatural and forced. It's much easier to remember key points or particular messages that you want to get across in each section of your speech, rather than remembering word for word. And equally, if you're using PowerPoint, don't read from a PowerPoint, because people can just read your PowerPoint. That would be easier. Try and keep to 20 words or fewer for a slide, and use those 20 words to help you remember your key points or your trigger words that you're going to focus on. As you practice, videoing yourself is a really good technique, or recording orally what you're saying, and then playing it back, firstly maybe to yourself, and if you're feeling confident enough, giving it to a friend to listen to, who maybe can give you some feedback and spot things that you don't spot. Fifth tip in general is your delivery. When people are talking, often when they pause, they like to fill the space with what we call fillers, and these you can see over here tend to be kind of this sort of actually like yeah, and it can get quite irritating, maybe is the word, if you do it too much, especially in an exam where you may be marked for organisation, fluency and cohesion. You want to avoid fillers where as much as possible. So first thing is to be aware of what fillers do you use, because we all use different ones. Some people will go like, okay, just to fill the space. So first thing is to recognize that, and to recognize that actually having a space and a pause can be a good thing, and just being quiet for a second or two as you move on to another section is a good technique. Second thing in terms of delivery is to go slow. Often when we're nervous or anxious, we want to race through and get it finished. And if you're listening, that can be quite difficult if you're going too fast, because you only get to hear the speech once. So go slow. And the third point in terms of delivery is to think about the stress that you're using. So you don't want to sound like a robot. In English, you may stress particular words to make them stand out. And often those are going to be the strong verbs and adjectives that you want to say a little bit more loudly, so they're clear. Another good tip is to signpost where you're going. If you're speaking, as it says, someone else is listening, and they only get to listen once. So in order to make it clear what your structure is, have a signpost early on, signal where you're going to go. So for example, if you're giving an oral assessment or doing an oral test, at the end of your intro you may say, in the next section I will discuss, and then the listener knows where it's going. Or now I'm going to talk about my other literary text, and so on. And so it's easy to follow where you're going. So signposting can also help with organisation scores if you're doing it for an exam. And then finally, this is mainly for examination as such at school, but also for public speaking. If you have an exam or a speech, the best thing is to know your subject matter and to know your extracts. If you're talking about literary extracts, for example, know them really, really well. If you're talking in general, know your subject well, be passionate about that subject, and the more you know, the more you can put that across to your audience, and you won't have to worry about filling space. You'll have lots to say, and that will give you confidence when you're talking. Okay, I hope that helps, and good luck with your speaking skills.